Good evening.
Good morning.
Good evening. Guten Tag.
Guten Tag. Welcome to episode 37 of DJs and Sake.
And beer. And my beer is called Never Sleep. Funny enough.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
IPA, like always. Cheers.
A local one?
Yeah, I like this brew that I always go to. I have like so many of their beers, so I haven't bought anything because I'm trying to finish them.
David, do you have like a beer fridge, or do you keep all the beer you buy in the same fridge that you keep everything else?
I keep it in the same fridge as everything else, but I was actually looking at a beer fridge because I think it'll just be easier that way.
His fridge is practically a beer fridge anyways. That's all that's in there.
Pretty
when
much.
you open it. And a bottle of mustard maybe.
It's like 80% beer and the rest is food.
Yeah. You got to have the mustard in there.
It's because like I want to get one to have like in the garage so I can put stuff that like I can like age it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if I wanted to sit there instead of taking up space in my my real refrigerator.
Now this may be a dumb question, but does beer have like a shelf life? Because sake you have to drink within 6 months to a year. Yeah. There are aged sakes which can be decades old, but they're not going to taste like what sake would taste like to you and I.
Yeah, higher alcohol beers are generally the ones that you could store, like stouts, barley wines, even some sours.
Yeah,
sours aren't generally high in alcohol, but you can sit on those for like a few years, and they'll taste better. It's kind of like a wine, because of the fruit inside. But like IPAs and lagers and stuff like that, IPAs you have to drink like super fresh. It's like the best time. Maybe I think they say within 1 or 2 months maximum.
Yeah.
And I think a lager, I don't know. I really don't know the super fresh lager, but that generally lasts a little bit longer.
Now,
lager is longer because the name lager comes from storage.
Storage, yeah.
Yeah. But it's not that long. I mean, this is a lager. This is a typical lager, a German one, Vollbierhell, which I just checked. It's you should drink it by June 2021. 2021, is that next year?
Yeah. Damn.
Wow. So is the year, or is there a date listed on when it was bottled?
Generally, yes. Most breweries now put a bottle date or a can date on their beers.
Okay.
So you know which batch it was, or you know how fresh the beer is, especially with IPAs. When I go buy IPAs at the store, I always look at the can date because sometimes, it'll be like a not so popular IPA and it'll be like 6 months old and it just won't taste great. So I always look at the can date. And breweries that take the can date off is shady, I think. I think they do it on purpose just so they get rid of it.
So are there any beer clubs where you are, like you get together with other beer fanatics and you sit around and you drink beer and you talk about how beer is made and
it's called a pub.
No, I'm not a part of any of that, but just like, I mean, there's like a few friends that I share beers with and that we drink beer and buy beer together, and like we trade within our friends, but I'm not like a club or anything. I don't think I'm that hardcore about it.
I've been trying to push David to just start brewing his own beer now.
Yeah.
No, man. Yeah. I want to.
Maybe you did once, didn't you? I was at your house when you had this bucket there and you tried it once, right?
I didn't brew it at my house, but I gave you a bottle. But that was, man, I think that was like almost 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
We also had an official interface beer when we had our 15-year label anniversary, and David brewed a small batch for the.
Damn, go David! How did it taste?
It was great, man. Like I think I made like 45 bottles, and
what?
We put them for sale at the party, and they sold out within like an hour.
Yeah, they sold out right away. Everybody showed up early and got in line for their.
Yeah, because I told them it's like first come first serve, and people roll up early to get the beer. So, yeah, it was.
Now I'm guessing, because you're not brewing all the time since then, that like it was difficult. It's like a difficult hobby to maintain, right? Regularly.
It's not. I guess it depends how nerdy you want to get with making the beer, then it's really difficult because there's a lot of science and temperatures and especially with the yeast and stuff like that. But when you can just like, it's kind of like it's cooking. It's like cooking, you know. You can get as geeky and like nerdy as you want about it, or you can just keep it pretty simple and make a basic pale ale or IPA, and it'll come out okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think mine came out good, but it wasn't amazing. But my friend helped me brew, which he does that. That's what he does full time as well.
Oh, there you go.
He's like a professional brewer. So I had help.
Now, did you print labels for the?
Yeah, watch. Let me grab the bottle real quick.
Yeah.
I had a feeling he was gonna have one
I
nearby.
think Ali, you're right. We should do shows where we have one of us as a guest.
Yeah, we
have-
talked
We
about
have
like,
David as a guest, and he just completely runs through like how to brew beer.
yeah.
So this is the first one that I gave Chris. I call it Trunk Ale.
The
Oh,
trunk ale,
dope.
yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
this one. And then this was the one for the party, the interface beer. I saved the bottle.
Wow.
Look at you. Damn, killing it.
2017. So yeah, just these are two. Like I made some other couple of brews, but I didn't make labels for them.
I think that was the final interface party in LA, the last one, right?
Yeah, the 15-year anniversary.
And
Yeah.
how many did you make for that? How many?
This one was like 45. I think it was 60 total, but like the ones that took to the party were like 45. All the rest I gave to like friends and family.
Wow.
Now, how much pride did you take in you and your friends and other people all drinking these limited edition runs of the beer that you brewed? That must have been a moment.
Is that?
I was proud.
Is that?
I was
little-
definitely proud. I'll say that much.
You know, when I made this one where I put my name on it and called it Trunk Ale, I was like,
Is
this
that
is
a little like you play your own track and people dancing to your music? Is that the same thing?
yeah, and like people.
No.
I guess it's kind of the same.
I remember when we did the interface ones, all of our friends were super excited. Like even the day before, they were like, "Dude, David made some beers," and everybody got there early to get theirs, and we were all pretty stoked and proud about it.
Yeah.
And okay, I must ask, what was the alcohol content percentage?
This one wasn't very strong. I think I didn't put it on this one.
You left
This
it
one
off the
was like-
label.
No, I didn't. I did on the other one. The other one, the Trunk Ale was 8.4.
Oh, wow.
Damn.
Yeah, it was a bit strong. The interface one, I think it was about 6 or 7. It wasn't super. Oh wait, it is on here. 5.5.
5.5.
It was a
Not bad.
pale ale. So yeah,
Good
I'd like to
times.
do it again someday.
Someday you should be doing it now, man.
No, for like
What
one
better
of
time?
like one of our observe parties to make like a special observe brew. You know.
Yeah.
One day.
Wow. So just before we jumped on, we were talking about something really, really important that's happened. The McRib is back, right?
Yeah.
Who had the McRib?
I
I've
haven't
never
it,
had one, man.
But when it's been like, when was the last time the McRib was back?
I don't know. I get all my news feed from Hiroko whenever she mentions
Yeah,
McRib's
exactly, that's
back,
what
and I'm just
I
like,
opened-
all right.
I opened
We
Facebook.
got to have Hiroko on. She
Let's
seems
do
so
it.
fun.
She'd be a great guest.
She's a good
Yeah.
time, man.
She's on the short
2005.
list. Yeah.
Anybody else have ever had a McRib before?
Never.
Chris, has there ever been a vegan McRib?
Oh, I don't know.
But I think the last time I had a McRib was like at least 20 years ago.
Wow.
And it was
Do you
never
think-
one of those things that I was like, oh, this is great.
Do you guys think that McDonald's, if they came out with a vegan McRib, do you think vegans would go? Like, would they flock to McDonald's to,
There is a vegan burger now at McDonald's.
huh?
There's a vegan burger at McDonald's now.
Oh, there is.
Yeah,
I don't
Actually-
know if they have it in the U.S. yet, do they?
they have it in Germany.
Yeah, in the U.S. they don't have a vegan burger yet. I think you
If
can
I'm
only
not-
get it at Carl's Jr.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Germany is the only country that has a McRib year round. I thought
What?
I heard that somewhere. Yeah,
I think that's an urban myth.
I'm gonna look it up.
It's an urban myth. In other news, December, guys, the year is almost over. Can you believe this?
Yeah.
Isn't this great? And while
Oh,
I was
man.
And it's been snowing, right, Chris?
Huh?
It's been snowing in Frankfurt.
Smelling?
Snowing.
Oh yeah, smelling too. It's smelling too. It was snowing, yeah. And this is smelling too, because if you go down in a basement, which is kind of humid, and you find the stuff which is like rotting away. But one interesting thing I found is because since we were discussing who to get as a guest on the show, I found 20 years ago I did a radio show here in Frankfurt, and I found the guest list, basically the lineups. And for example, on the 5th of October 2000, we had Laurent Grandier on. There was Pascal Feos.
Wow.
There's Josh Wink, Sven Fade,
Rockmod.
Cisco Ferreira, The Advent, DJ Good Groove, Adam Bayer. There's Laurent.
Fias. Wow, amazing.
And we're gonna have Laurent on, right?
Hopefully, yeah.
Apparently. So 20 years later, it's like 20 years. What the hell? But I found something else too. Look at that. It's not a record.
Whoa.
It's not a tape.
It's Jack's Records.
It's a book.
Yeah.
The DJs.
And we should speak to our guest about this, shouldn't we?
Yes, we should.
Yeah, who's our guest?
What do you think?
There he is.
There he is.
I mean, the man needs no introduction. We have Alan Oldham on the show from Detroit, living in Berlin now, who's responsible for some of the most incredible artwork that's been associated with the early Detroit techno scene. And Alan, if you're there, please feel free to come on. There he is.
Yo.
Hey, Alan.
Hey,
Cheers.
Welcome.
Alan, is this from you too? Is this you too? You? Did you do
yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, that's Miss Jax.
That's Miss Jax, right?
That's Miss Jax in front of, I can't remember the name of it, but in Eindhoven, it's this famous structure. It looks like a flying saucer. So that's her in front of I don't know what it's called.
Wow, it's so cool.
Yeah, that was me. That was me, my younger self.
Hello, Alan. Nice to have you on the show.
Hey,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm honored to be among you guys, to be honest. Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
thank you, man.
Cheers, dude.
Cheers. Alan, what are you drinking?
Drinking pale ale.
Pale ale.
Yeah.
What brewery is that?
What brewing? That's a good question. Handgebraut. Oh, but I can't even pronounce this.
Is it from Berlin?
It's from Berlin.
Oh.
Braus Specialität. I can't even pronounce this. Don't make me embarrass myself trying to
No,
pronounce
it's all good. It's all good. I was just curious.
But
Alan, you are from Detroit. We all know that, but how long have you been living in Berlin now?
I have been living here full time for this is year 6. I moved here in 2014. And I moved here October 1st, 2014. That's when I got here.
Nice.
And I've been here nonstop ever since. And before that, I would, coming like all of you guys, I would come back and forth for gigs, stay for a couple of months. I mean, you guys have all done it. You just come for like 2 or 3 months and then play all your dates and then go back.
When was the first time you came to Berlin then?
1997.
Wow. Okay.
When I first got here, it was still the Deutsche Mark. That was when I signed with Trésor.
Right.
And they brought me to play the club. And that was the first time I played the club. And this is the old Trésor. And that was the first time I came. Actually, no, I came here before that. I played a Mayday. The year before, like in 96.
Also in Berlin, the one in the Weissenseehalle.
Yes.
All right.
It was me, Luke Slater, Westbaum. That was the first time. And then the second time was Trésor. And then I was coming regularly after that.
Tell us, how was this going into Trésor, first time coming over? How was that for you?
And that was the original Trésor.
Obviously, yeah.
It was kind of for me as a DJ at that point, it was kind of a dream come true to actually be playing Trésor, because before me, so many big names had been on the label, before I got there. And, you know, you're walking in the footsteps of, you know, all these guys. And it was like nothing we had in Detroit. The first time I played Tresor, they had me up in Globus because they weren't sure about how I sounded. So they put me up there. So that went well. And then they put me in the basement, and, you know, it was just super hot, super sweaty. The next time I played, super hot, super sweaty. This is when techno was like 140 and up.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the beats were banging.
140 is back.
Well, it's back because the new young kids want their hardcore now.
It's
You know,
145 now.
it's their turn. Yeah,
Sometimes
man.
150. Yeah.
I did a track. I mean, I can say it now. I did a track for B Pitch. They just did this compilation, and David is on it. And I submitted a track, and they basically told me it was too slow, and I had to go back. So I came back at 142, and
Well,
they
how
said,
slow was too slow?
yeah, it was too slow.
But how slow? What was the BPM, the original?
My original BPM was 130,
Okay.
and they said it was too slow. So I went up to 142 with like 30% swing, and they took it.
Nice.
So yeah, so
That wasn't a gradual increase. That was just like, fine, you want faster? Here you go.
So yeah, that's what it was like at the old Tresor, and that's where I met. I think that is that's only one of two times that I met Chris in person. Was at the Tresor closing in 05, and then I saw him at the Movement Festival. I guess it was last year.
Yeah.
Those are the only two times I've.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's it? Wow.
Yeah.
Although I feel like you've been in my life like the past 25 years, really.
Aw.
And Alan, I want to ask you, like, when you were coming over to Berlin, we need to go way back.
Okay.
I want to go to like the mid 90s, because I was chatting to Robert Hood on the phone and talking about, is it the Majestic Theatre and the Sardine Bar? I mean, how was because obviously a lot of American DJs were flying over to Germany in the mid 90s to play but were you actually playing in Detroit at that time? Was there a scene like in the mid to late 90s?
Yes, it was. It had become, by the mid 90s, it had become rave.
Right.
But there were a couple of clubs before that had techno. I really didn't. I was more like rave though. I had a kind of residency at Majestic.
Right.
A little while.
And
like
what was this like? Until I spoke to Rob about it, I didn't even know about the club. What was it like?
Well,
was it an after hours place, or is it?
No. Majestic was actually a theater.
Right.
And that's the proper name for it, the Majestic Theater, right? So when you go in the front, like it was part of a complex and it was owned by this one family. So you had a restaurant, and it was, Majestic Cafe. So you had the restaurant, and then you had a bowling alley, Majestic Lanes or whatever. And there was a smaller space towards the front called the Magic Stick. And that was more indie rock bands. That was like when White Stripes first started. They were playing there. And then in the back, they had like a whole theater in the back. Like a whole theater with the stage and the curtains and the whole bit. And kind of the bigger indie rock acts would play in that space. But in the off time, when they didn't have bands, they had DJs. So because Blake Baxter, he was a resident there for like a few years. And I had a Saturday night there, but it didn't last long. I was there for like a month, like maybe 8 weeks or something. And I brought in guests. I had Sean Deason come in and play, a set. I had some guests and stuff, but it didn't really last long. And then the rave scene came along in Detroit, and people were doing the illegal space. And then that's kind of where I started playing a lot in the city. It was more like the illegal stuff, the underground. I used to play at the Shelter. There's a place called St. Andrew's Hall in Detroit.
Yeah.
Legendary.
And that's another venue for bands. And they used to have 3 floors of fun where it was dance music in the basement. It was kind of punk rock or something, indie rock in the middle. And then upstairs they had like chill out type thing.
Mhm.
And I used to play 3 floors of fun. That was in the early 90s though.
What about there was a place? What about this place, the Sardine Bar? Do you know this?
That was
one?
after I left.
Okay.
That was after I left.
Yeah.
So
I think the Majestic is still, they're still doing like parties there, right? It's still,
the Majestic is still there, but they sold the place now. So the fear is that it might not be around much longer. But they were having parties, and then the last I heard about this space, all right. So they tried to start a new electronic space within that building for electronic music because they were trying to capitalize on the music on the movement festival. So they wanted to do something regular with electronic music, techno, whatever. So they opened up this space. So they changed the Magic Stick into this electronica kind of space. So the indie rock heads were all, they were all bitching because their music kind of got shoved to the side to make this new format of techno. So then the manager, it's very vague. You guys can look it up, but the manager had made some racist tweets, had some racist content, and he deleted it, but it got out, and the outcry was so bad that the guy got fired and the whole club got shut down, and then they went back to the Magic Stick. This is right around the time I left. Mm-hmm. So from that point, I don't know if they do any techno things there. I think the restaurant is still there.
I'm pretty sure Pax House still uses Magic Stick for most of their after party stuff.
Is that right?
Yeah. I think Richie Houghton did a Jack party at the Majestic years ago.
Most every major space Rich had a party at.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
now, you mentioned White Stripes. Obviously, they're synonymous with Detroit, and you have artists that created a revolution, like Iggy Pop and the Stooges and Eminem, whatever. Like, were hip hop kids and rock kids, were they coming out to these techno parties, or was everything quite segregated? The scenes, were they quite cliquey and segregated back then?
As the way I remember it, and let me emphasize, this is the way I remember it. Everybody else has a different thing, but I don't remember really too much crossover back in the day. You either went to a rock show, a rap show, or a rave. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have guys hanging out in different venues, different genres, but it was, to me, the scenes were segregated. I mean, from my perspective, because I would go to rock shows or like just indie rock shows back in Detroit, and that was a completely different crowd. And especially in the early to mid 90s, a lot of these rock dudes were not ready to accept drum machines and electronic music, Yeah. So it was segregated as I recall. So, but I'm just one guy. Somebody else from that era might have a different experience.
I second that. I had a very similar experience on the West Coast. I mean, not necessarily in Detroit, but definitely a separation between kind of the rock and the band scene compared to dance music and DJs and electronic music, for sure.
Well, those old rock dogs from back in the day, it's like, okay, what are these guys doing? They're playing records. They're not playing instruments.
Yeah.
What are they doing? This sucks. And that was their whole thing that I remember.
Well, I could relate to it because, I mean, my background was playing in bands before I went to my first rave, and I always had this like natural inclination to just think that, everything that was going on at rave parties was just like whatever, until someone like took my hand and was like, nah, we got to go. You got to check this out. And then once I got there, my whole mind just had exploded. I think that's what it takes. It just takes, especially for those old guys, like it just takes that one experience to actually see the potential and see what's going on.
I mean, there's rave, and EDM and techno and dance music. But then there's like there's a lot of like kind of indie, for lack of a better word, artists that were you know, playing indie events, but also employing a lot of electronics in their performances and stuff like that. I just wonder if some of that rock community and those artists would pop in to see those shows as opposed to going to like the big techno party.
I think the people that knew, they did. You know, the people that were using these machines even back in the 70s, they were aware, but of course it was their audience that maybe weren't aware how they made the tracks. You know, Neil Young did a track Sample and Hold. I mean, but I think his audience hated it, you know, so you know, this is the thing. So
wow. Now, Alan, you are quite well known as a cartoonist. Where did your love of drawing in your very specific style, where did that begin? What was that spark for you that got you interested in that?
Well, I've always drawn, like ever since I was a little kid. When my grandmother passed away, and I found some of the old stuff that she saved, and it was a bunch of my old drawings from when I didn't even remember doing them, like 4, 5, 6. So I've always liked to draw. And then I was about 11, and I was sick with the flu at home, stayed home from school, and my uncle came over with a big box of comic books. That's always how it starts.
Yeah.
So he comes over with a big box of comics, and it was all these Marvels, and basically that was it. You know, I was into comics because back in those days, I don't read new comics, but back in those days, you get a random box of comics and you're in the middle of storylines. So the first thing you want to do is go back and get the back issues to find out how the story started. And then once you do that, then you want to continue. So then it just kind of grew from there, from like 11 years old. And I just never stopped. I never stopped buying comics until maybe 2003. That was when I stopped buying new comics. But it's always been a lifelong thing. I always wanted to draw pro comics. And I, used to go to the comic conventions with my portfolio. Got rejected a few times. And, back in those days, you'd go and you'd beat up. That's basically what it is. You show your art.
On the spot?
Yeah, basically.
What era was this about?
Like you show your portfolio. Oh, your anatomy sucks. Your perspective sucks. Or your storytelling is boring. Or, you need to do this. You need to do that. Here, buy this anatomy book and copy out of that and blah, blah, blah. And they would just kick your ass.
And what era was this in?
Oh, my God. This is early to mid 80s.
Okay.
Early to mid 80s. So, the old editors are really tough on you. And then the black and white indie boom started, where so many people were making their own comics. And that's where Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started.
Eastman and Laird.
It was just this black and white book, and they made it as a joke, and the thing just blew up.
Yeah.
And then everybody started trying to do their own rip-off versions of it and stuff like that. And that's when I finally got published. That's how I got published, not with the big two. So I did my own comic called Johnny Gambit, and that was for 3 issues back in the 80s. And then techno started. Techno came into my life. And then I kind of slowly stopped doing comics and started getting more involved with techno.
Were you going to the same high school as Derek and those guys? Is that how you fell?
Not at all. Not at all. Derek lived 2 blocks away from me when I was 10, 11 years old, that same era. And I was out riding my bike one day, and, you meet the guys from the other block, and then you start playing with the guys from the other block. Yeah. And Derek was one of those guys from the other block. And he came over my house, and we became friends, and he's playing with my toys and all this stuff. And his mom left him alone a lot because he was like a total latchkey kid. So he'd come over my house. And that's how we became friends. As time went on, I moved off the block, and then he moved away, and I didn't see him again until high school days. I was like a senior, Then I started seeing him at the mall. I had a job at the mall.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when I reconnected with him at the mall.
Mm-hmm.
So one day I was in the student lounge at Wayne State, and I was drawing Johnny Gambit between classes. I would bring all my art stuff to school, and I would have like these big gaps between classes. So I was sitting there drawing one day, and Derek cuts through the student lounge on his way to work, and he saw me drawing. He's like, "Hey man, I'm starting this label. Would you like to do the label art for it?" You know, and I said, how much is it? He's like, $50. So I'm like, cool. So I did it. And that was Nude Photo. And that was like the first Transmat record. And then like a couple of days later, he comes to me. He's like, I got a friend who needs a logo. Can you do a logo? Now, mind you, this is 86-ish. So I was hand drawing logos. Like I was hand drawing fonts. And then it was the days of press type, you know, where you had like the clear press type and you would just press it. You know, Matt knows,
Yeah.
you know, where you had the Letraset press type and you just press it down. Well, it was in those days. And he said, I got a friend who needs a logo. Can you do a logo? And I'm like, cool, you know, same price, okay. So then he brings his buddy around the next day to my school, and his buddy is Kevin Saunderson. And that's how I met Kev. And Kev needed a logo for KMS. So I did the logo for KMS. So if you go back and you check out like Truth of Self-Evidence, you know, some of those old recent San Antonio, I did the logo for that. So that's kind of how I started getting involved in the techno scene. And then I started figuring out that the stuff I was hearing was made by guys that I knew that were my own age. Because back in those days, records were made by corporations, not people. Yeah. And it was magical to make a record, like a real record with the album cover and everything. That was when it was hard to do it. I mean, now you can make 150 copies of something for like 650 euro, you know. But back then it was real to make, you know, it was magical. And guys I knew were doing it. Wow. So I kind of got involved with techno there. And then my major was radio, TV, film. Even though I was an artist, my major was radio, TV, film, you know, broadcasting at Wayne State. And I always wanted to be a DJ. That was going to be my real job. That was the whole concept, was that I was going to be a real DJ and I could draw on the side or whatever. And at that time, a real DJ was one of those guys on the radio. That's who I wanted to be. And I had a radio show on WDET that I was able to get into. And I was playing a lot of their stuff on my show. And that's when things started drifting kind of away from the art thing and more into techno, because people I knew and my own age and Black were making this music, and they were doing it by themselves. You know, this was still kind of the tail end of the old music business day, you know, the old fat guy with the cigar and sign this and, you know, all that shit. But for these guys to have done it alone, basically, that's what really got me.
And I read that was considered by many as one of the most avant-garde radio shows going at the time.
At the time. Of course, when you're doing it, you don't think about it. Yeah. But people still have tapes of it, like even now.
Can you tell us how did you structure a show like this? Did you talk a lot? Did you mix? What did you do? What was the show like?
Well, I structured the show. Basically, I would play 3 tracks in a row, and then I would back announce the tracks I just played, right? And I did not mix. And I would just play the tracks normally as songs. And then say I play 3 in a row. I would interrupt them with the station ID, because in those days you had a thing called a cart, and you put it in and you just press the button, and it was like a 15-second 8-track tape that would play the ID of the show. Like you're listening to WDET, whatever. And then at the end of the 3rd song, I would say that was blah, blah, blah. Before that, on and on. And that's how I would do it. But it was not mixed. So each track stood on its own on my show.
How did you get into DJing and all that? Was it from techno, or was it before that?
Well, so that's another story. Okay, so I started out on the radio, as you know, and then I went around to these local bars trying to get a night. And I was trying to use my little radio props to get a night at a bar. So I talked there's a sports bar, and I talked them
we
into
still
letting me
talking
play.
end of the 80s?
This is 90.
Right.
Now we're in 1990.
Okay.
So I went around to these bars, and I found there was some suburban sports bar. I don't even know how I hooked up with these guys, but I gave them a tape, and I told them I was on the radio, so they let me have a night. And they had decks at the bar, and that's how I learned how to blend at the bar in front of people. Because at that time, you know, decks were like 500 each, and that was back in 1990. Mm. And you know, I mean, who had that kind of money? But I actually learned on the job. So again, I did that for about 8 weeks, man, maybe 3 months. And nobody had ever seen blends before. So that's kind of how I lasted that long, because they were like, oh, this guy's mixing. That's how I learned the basics, really. And so that kind of went its course. And
what kind of stuff were you? I'm curious what kind of stuff you were playing on the radio prior to starting to play. I'm assuming you were playing more of the like clubbier stuff.
And in that bar.
Yeah.
No, I was playing like real techno. I was playing. My show was anything electronic. Mm-hmm. So I'd go from Nitzer Ebb to Derek to Rich to Kenny Larkin to Front 242, Consolidated, Gruesome Twosome. You know, when at the time of my show, it was this historical, this musical moment where you had Chicago house, acid house, Detroit techno, Belgian new beat, yeah. European body music. Mm-hmm. And then you had kind of the experimental British Chris and Cozy, Cabaret Voltaire, you know, all psychic TV. Everything was coming out new at that time. And I had an internship at the radio station before I started on the air. And my job was to alphabetize the music library. So in doing my internship, that was my internship. And I got college credit for it, by the way. So I'm going through the records, and they had all this stuff, and they were sending it to the station, but nobody was playing it. Right? Like Cabaret Voltaire, all the wax track stuff. Like they were on the mailing list, but nobody was playing it because when I got to the station, it was public radio, right? So, you know, crunchy granola, folk, blues. They were playing jazz, like super, like hard bop, 50s, 60s jazz, you know. But there was no dance music, electronica, nothing. So I just basically started playing that stuff, and that's how the show got its identity. But everything was coming out at the same time, all that kind of music. So I played everything, not just the clubby stuff either, but really deep.
Did that go under your name, or did you already had the DJ T1000 pseudonym?
No, that wasn't until later. That was my name. Fast Forward with Alan Oldham. That was the name of the show.
So what was the name of the show, and what was your DJ name when you were on the show?
No, it was the name of the show was Fast Forward.
Fast Forward.
And you know, Fast Forward with Alan Oldham. It was my name. And I did that for 5 years. That was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
I did that for 5 years, and then Underground Resistance came calling, and then the rest is history, really.
So we had one question from the YouTube light being is how long did it take for Alan to play outside the US once you started playing? And I might add the question is like, where was your first gig outside the US then?
Okay, so in 1990, I visited my cousin. He used to live outside of Amsterdam. And I met some kids at a bar, local bar in Holland. And it turned out that they were giving a party. I wasn't even anybody yet. I was just a tourist. But I had brought my records just in case, And they gave some rave. It was in the middle of the Netherlands, and it was at a public pool. It was kind of like Stadtbad here in Berlin, where it was a pool that was drained out, and they had a bridge that went over the pool, and the DJ setup was on that bridge that went over the pool. And that was the first time I officially played in Europe. That was 1990. And then my first official gig overseas, I think, was that May Day.
All right.
In 1995, 96. That was the first time Yeah.
So that came about because of your collaboration with Jux. Like, tell us a little bit about that. How did this come about?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a whole nother story. Okay, dig this.
Hey, we're here to hear all these stories.
Okay,
point.
it's cool. It's cool. So dig this. All right, so I had hooked up with some guys through my radio show, and they made industrial music, and nobody was playing their music. I met these guys at St. Andrew's Hall, and there was a couple of shows at University of Windsor, and they were the only other Black dudes I saw at these shows besides me. So it was a Skinny Puppy concert, and I went up to them, and it was two dudes, and we started talking, and they told me that they had a band, and they were an industrial band, and would I want to come over to their house? This is the long way to the Signal to Noise, Jack's Up Beats story. So I went over to these guys' house, and they had a studio, and they were totally under the radar. They did not make techno. They didn't know anything about the Belleville 3 techno, blah, blah. They were influenced by Front 242 and, Ministry and, that sort of thing. So you know where I'm going with this if you know your music. So anyway.
Those are my roots, man. So keep talking.
Right? So these guys put together some tracks, and I started playing them on my radio show, and I became friends with these guys, and they started letting me make my own tracks at their place, and they were kind of teaching me how to do everything. So basically, long story short, these guys went on to become Code Industry, and they got signed to Antler Subway in Belgium, and I was friends with these guys, and they let me make tracks at their place. And I made my own little demo on the side. I was sending it out, and I went out to Record Time, which was the record shop back in the day where Mike Huckabee used to work, rest in peace. And I was looking at labels, researching where I can send my tape. So I saw a Jack's record. And I called my cuz, because my cuz was in the Air Force, and he was living in Holland. So I called my cuz. And I said, how far do you live from Eindhoven? And he said, oh, it's like a 2.5-hour drive. Not even. I'm like, oh shit, cool, So I sent the tape, because I was thinking, these guys, because back then, people ripping you off was rife back in those days. There was no internet, no social media, no nothing. So I wanted to, so if anything went wrong, I could send my cousin over there. That was the logic. So I sent the tape. A couple weeks go by, and I get a call, and it's Saskia. And she was like, "Oh man, this is some great music. I want to put it out. Are you really from Detroit?" Da, da, da.
Well, for those who don't know, Saskia is Miss Jux, basically.
Miss Jax. I'm sorry, Miss Jax. So yeah, Miss Jax called my house, and she asked me if these were my tracks, and yes, they're great, and she wants to put them out. So I went back and I sent her a DAT, and I asked her, can I do my own label art? And she said, sure, send whatever. So I packed everything up. I did my own little label art, and I sent it to her. So I get a call again. And then she's like, did you draw this? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, are you the guy that did Nude Photo on Transmat? And I said, yeah, that's me. oh man, I want you to do all my labels. Oh man. So that's how I started doing stuff for her. So I did drawings for her for maybe a decade or more.
Oh.
Yeah. And so that's how I got with her. And then and she put out my first record also.
Wow. And how long was that relationship doing the art for the labels?
Like over a decade.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there any place in the internet where people could go and look at it? Like a collected place? Like
I've got, if you go on alanoldham.com,
Mhm.
I've got a page which is basically archives, and it's a lot of the old jacks up drawings there.
And do you have like a collection of everything, Alan, from that?
I don't.
I mean, you know me. I've got the mouse mat. I've got everything from, you know, nothing.
Do you have a basement like Chris does that he's been going through the last 10 days?
I've got
Why do you put basement in
storage?
There was a few years ago that Miss D-Jax sold a lot of her collection to the Record Loft, which is just around the corner from my house in Kreuzberg. And that included everything, a lot of the stuff that Alan did, like the books, the mouse mats, all this kind of crazy stuff, you know. It's immense.
And
Yeah, all my stuff is in storage.
someone had asked me, a friend of mine asked me, do you ever plan on releasing like a book or anything with all this art that you've done over the years on labels and stuff like that?
Eventually.
Yes.
Do you have any of your stuff on Comixology or any of the digital distribution centers?
I do not. My old stuff is out of print. I'm working on a new thing right now.
Well, because I see that Johnny Gambit's on. You could still pick up copies of that.
Well, if you went on like eBay and stuff, people still
There's
have
one
it.
on there's some on Amazon too.
Yeah, see, there you go.
But I just figured, like, in this age of like where most comic book writers are going digital, and like everyone pretty much reads books on iPads and stuff. I mean,
Well, I mean,
a good time
original,
to reissue some stuff.
Well, the original pages of Johnny from back 30 years ago, like they're in storage too, and I haven't scanned that stuff. That stuff has to be like really remastered. Like we have to scan it. You have to go in and clean it up. You have to, do contrast and, just all kinds of stuff. So that's like a whole nother thing, which I have not done.
As the graphic novel comic market, is it gone fully digital? Is it like the record industry? Is it moving that way?
It's certainly becoming more and more and more digital. I still think there's a profound larger amount of purists who like a physical book in their hand, probably more so than there are vinyl lovers who want to keep vinyl. But the digital market has been taking over. Like Comixology was one that was developed for iPad that Amazon just purchased, and now they've kind of taken over it. But for like $9.99 a month, you could read as many issues as you want. It's almost become like the Spotify of comic books now.
Wow.
Alan, what is the similarities between the comic business and the music business that you've encountered over the years then? Like, it's two different worlds, and you connected them, right? Like, it rarely happens that the comics take place in the music world, right?
It's pretty much two separate things. I just happen to be into both. The distribution challenge is what the two media have in common. Mm-hmm. The distribution challenge, digital, like Mo was saying, comic shops are going down, record shops are going down.
You were just talking about remastering stuff too?
You had to remaster. I mean, literally, you have to remaster old pages. Yeah. So it's similar. It's similar in a way because you're going by 20th century. Both industries are still going by 20th century paradigms in terms of distribution and printing and the physical aspect of it. But it's a lot of yeah.
Well, don't underestimate the value of of the stuff that you've done. I'm sure there's tons and tons and tons. I already know myself personally, tons of comic book readers and graphic novel readers who listen to techno and would absolutely love to have a higher quality access to this stuff as well. So you should definitely get on it, man.
No, it's well, part of the thing too is that I'm here and the stuff is there, and then COVID happened.
Yeah, of course.
Because, I was remastering a lot of the old Generator stuff. And I go back twice a year. It was on reel to reel. I didn't want to travel with it. So I would go to Chicago and I digitized the stuff. And I went back twice last year and I digitized a bunch of stuff, but then COVID happened. And it was kind of an ongoing thing where every time I went back, I would, scan something or digitize something. I mean, I've got like mini DVs from 2002 to like maybe 2006. And, mini DV is gone. So I have to actually reformat those and, but again, they're there and I'm here. So kind of tough right now with COVID and the lack of travel.
Yeah.
So was there like
you've been doing some like art gallery stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
Is it in Berlin? Was it in Berlin? Yeah.
Yeah. I just did one recently, I think in September here in Berlin. I've done them in Amsterdam, Paris, Vienna, Detroit, and here in Berlin. And the last two that I've done have been in Berlin because of COVID. So you can't really travel.
Was it all old artwork or new stuff?
No, new stuff, paintings.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And do you just have them just to display? Are you selling these paintings or what's the deal?
Sir, I'm selling these paintings.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm selling these paintings. And, it's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, not only am I selling the paintings, I mean, T-shirts, I've got the masks. Masks really went well. Some small merch, posters, prints. Yeah.
So let me guess, you made more money painting stuff with music than with music in 2020.
I guess you could say so. It was good to fall back on. Definitely.
I've been wanting to get my hands on some of your work on some medium of some sort at one of your galleries or something. I just haven't had a chance to make it out there.
Yeah, wonderful. Matt has bought a painting.
It used to be up
studio,
here, but it's in,
Awesome.
in my new studio. So I'm dying to buy some more as well, Alan.
Oh, well, I still got that piece, by the way, that you asked about.
Yeah, for sure. But I always loved the ones, the show you did. I think it was in Bikini. Was it like 2013 in Berlin?
Yes.
And you had the nude photo, these large circular artworks. They're amazing. So
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, they're great.
So you had also done a small book for Richie Houghton's Overdrive as well. And I know that people have scanned that and it's kind of made its way around the internet in a rather low res format of somehow. How did that come about?
I mean, it was really kind of simple. Rich approached me about doing a comic book about techno, because this was the days when he was doing Cybersonic with Dan Bell.
Oh, this one, right?
Yep, that's the one.
There you go.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And he asked me about doing a book, and I said yes. And we agreed on the fee, and it was very generous, and I went and did it. So, and who knew that was history? You know what I mean? So, but that was a really good one.
And were you when you did like nude photo? Was Derek giving you the records? Were you you getting the finished copies of everything you designed?
Yes.
Oh, great.
I was getting white labels and finished copies.
And could you hear the music before you did the center labels, so you got an idea of the music?
No, I just did the images.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
Was there a direction, or they're just like, here, make a drawing and we'll use it, or did they kind of?
No, Derek said he wanted something.
Okay.
So I got the name of the track is Nude Photo, so I drew a chick.
Yeah.
Right.
Nude, so
Matt, can you hold up that? What was it called? Flexi disc? Is that what they were called?
Yeah.
For all the younger kids who've never seen something like that before.
Yeah. And
I used to love those things.
We have to thank Ian Pooley. This was a gift from him, but this is featuring Alan's. It's like a small comic book, featuring Alan's artwork, which I guess I'm not even sure if it was actually sold or is it like a freebie? I mean, back then, because the thing is, back then labels like this were pressing a lot of records so they could we could make stuff like this, or labels could make things, give them away, or like little sort of vanity projects. You know, it was possible. It was possible, but no, this is great if you find it.
What year is that from?
91.
91.
No, 92.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, bro.
What was considered like the most revered graphic novel or graphic comic? Was it Watchmen?
It's a toss up between Dark Knight and Watchmen.
Yeah.
Basically.
And which came out first, or were they around the same time?
Dark Knight.
Dark Knight did. That was in the late 80s that it came out?
That was the 80s.
Yeah.
86.
And then there was Daredevil. I mean, I was a big fan of Hard Boiled as well. That was my favorite.
Oh, that was really good.
Yeah. The
That was really good.
Jeff Darrow.
Jeff Darrow. Frank Miller.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy good.
I was reading a lot of Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse.
Are there any current comic book artists that influence you now, or that surprised you with their work?
Right now, I'm into the more abstract dudes now. Ashley Wood, Paul Pope.
There you go.
Those are the only people I really.
Oh, Mo, you're a big comic book fan, right?
Yeah, dude. I mean, I've read a lot of Ashley Wood's work, Pop Bot and War Robots.
I assume from the enthusiasm.
Yeah, man. I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd,
like
inside out. So
I used to love going to the local comic bookshops, and I was really into like the horror comics. There's a lot of horror comics, vampires and werewolves, and undead, and things like that.
I actually collect a lot of the old Tales from the Crypt books as well. I have a large collection of them back here as well.
Alan, have you ever been to Comic Con?
Once. I was lucky enough to go out. I was there in 2005.
Wow. Did you dress up?
I did not. I had a gig. It just so happens I had a gig at that time out in San Diego.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
So I stayed like a couple extra days after the gig and went to the con. And that was the only time I went to Comic-Con. Because Comic-Con is cool, but the flights in August are like just through the roof, man. It's just so expensive.
Especially to San Diego. Or were you in LA? As well? Were you in LA as well, or just in San Diego?
Just San Diego.
Oh, okay. So yeah, probably crazy. And hotel costs as well. And
so what was some of your early influences in terms of comic books? Sorry, I don't mean to drill this particular topic in, but you said you had a big box of books that had come in. Were there any particular series or artists that really had a big influence on you?
A lot of guys my age, it's basically the same guys, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. Yeah. Right? John Buscema, Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the rock solid basis of like the Marvel style.
Of course.
When I was a kid.
Did you like heavy metal? Remember that heavy metal?
I got into heavy metal in the 80s.
I love that. That was great. And the movies. They were running
this guy called Daniel Torres from Barcelona.
Yeah.
And he had a strip called Saxon. And I got into him through a friend, and he was doing this kind of old school sci-fi Art Deco, Flash Gordon kind of style. And from that, I kind of got into the more European heavy metal style. But that wasn't until later. I was like a straight up Marvel DC guy for the longest. And then when Love and Rockets came along, that changed everything for me.
Love and Rockets was not the band, but the comics, right?
I'm sorry?
Not the band, but the comics, right?
No, the comics. Okay. the band got the name from the comics.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's these guys, the Hernandez brothers, man. They're from like Oxnard.
Do you ever airbrush then as well, Alan? Were you doing airbrush?
I was never into it.
Never into
Graffiti? Graffiti? No.
Nope.
You didn't tag any walls in Detroit or Berlin or
Paris. Yeah, it was kind of, for me, it was a little bit, my brother was a huge comic book fan. And I mean, I was born in 81. So my brother got into it probably about 78. He's about 12 years older than me. So I grew up with long boxes of comic books all over the place in his room as a kid, and he would seldomly let me touch them and read them. But I don't think I really purely got into buying my books until the early 90s, when the kind of Image comic book thing had blown up.
And what happened to all the comics? His comics?
They're all next door in the closet to my studio right here. So I have everything. And I mean, it's a deep collection of like early Savage Dragon stuff, and all the original X-Men that go back, and Shatterstar, X-Force, all that stuff. So my brother was a huge collector, and I kind of inherited his collection over the years. But yeah, it wasn't until like the kind of independent, more Image stuff that came out earlier that kind of grabbed me. And then seeing your work growing up liking techno, and kind of seeing the collaboration of two worlds that I was totally into, was hugely inspiring for me. So that's purely why I'm so nerdy about these questions. So.
Keep being nerdy,
what's your most prized possession of a comic book?
I have a autographed Todd McFarlane Spider-Man. When the new 100th editions came out, they did them in like 10 different page covers, and I remember I went to a comic book convention, and me and my brother got them all signed. So those ones. And I also met James O'Barr, who originally did the Crow comic book, and he actually autographed a couple of those books for me as well. So I have those like in plaques. And
Alan, what about you?
Wait, by the way.
Yeah, I know exactly.
J.O. Barr.
Yeah. OG Detroiter again.
Yep.
Alan, what's your most prized possession?
Do you have any prized comic books?
Man, let's see. I've got the entire John Byrne run of X-Men signed. Wow. I've got the entire Miller run of Daredevil signed.
Wow.
Elementals number.
Are you okay?
Huh?
You kind of got me burned on that.
Are you okay?
It's like, oh shit, I'd just take a step back.
Elementals #1 signed, Bill Willingham. The first 12 issues of American Flag signed, Chaykin. Everything by Chaykin I've got it is signed.
Wow.
Black Hawk, all that stuff. Scorpion, the Atlas, Scorpion. Yeah, I would just see him at conventions, and I just have him sign everything.
Were there a lot of conventions in Detroit then in the 80s and 90s with
yes. There's a big con right now called Motor City Con.
Okay.
And that's like it is now like one of the biggest cons in the Midwest. And a lot of guests show up at it. So yeah.
Yeah, I hate to keep bringing the comic book topic.
I mean, I know, guys, I make music.
Yeah. But the one more question I have is there like a Comic-Con version in Europe?
No, I think they've tried to do. I think there are some. There's one in Switzerland, but they're more these sort of cosplay. They're not as big as in the States. I mean, when I first encountered Comic-Con, it was because I was into like toys and all this kind of like very nerdy shit, and now it's become like a celebrity hangout, hasn't it? But I think in Europe, it's still very much a niche thing. It doesn't have that pull, But
they have big shows here. But the problem is, I never find out about them until until the day of, and then you see it online somewhere. Yeah. But they do have big shows with guests.
Yeah, I've seen flyers for like a Frankfurt Comic-Con, where that's the same place where they do Music Messa,
and it's huge.
Hall. Yeah,
really.
Now, Alan, you connected obviously with Mike Banks, and you are, I think it was 96, you said 95, 96, around that time. But you had your first record out on Generator Records prior to that, right? And
yes.
93, maybe. Yes. Was that the first time that you...
I hooked up with Mike. It was like 91 when I met Mike. And then we started Generator in 93.
Was that when you used DJ T1000 for the first time?
Well, okay. Here's the story behind T1000. All right, so here we go. Because I know Chris wants to know. So the story behind it's pretty simple story. So I was this was the last days of my WDT show, and I just moved out on my own, left home, had my own little apartment, the whole bit. Trying to figure out how I was going to pay the rent, because I knew it was time to get out of my grandmother's house, but I didn't know how I was going to pay the rent. So I says, okay, I'm just going to leave.
How many years did you do the show at that point?
I did the show for 5 years.
And that you knew it's going to be over now.
Well, no, I didn't know it was going to be over. I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
Right, I was still doing it.
Did they let you keep all the promos from the station?
Well, if by letting me keep you mean I stole.
No, because I did the same when I was on my I was on the radio in my junior college.
Oh, really?
As well, yeah.
No, I stole them.
Yeah, nobody touched. There was like a few genres that none of the other DJs touched.
But apparently, Alan, you said that we're not interested in these records, anyways, right?
They were not.
So how did it end, the radio show? What is it, just from one day to the other? You got told.
Well, you know what? You let me tell the story.
Chris is high. Don't mind him.
I am not fucking high. What the hell is going on with you?
His kids are watching.
Chris is always high. That's his problem. He's always high.
Do you want me to be high?
All right. So dig this. Okay, dig this. Here we go. So I was on the last days of my radio show. I didn't know what I was going to do. So it turns out Underground Resistance had a tour booked in Australia. Okay, so I called Mike Banks to see if I could get some promos for my radio show. This is when Revolution for Change came out, the album on Network. I wanted to get a copy of it. So I called him up. I said, hey, man, let me get a copy of this promo. He's like, hey, man, let me call you back. I'm in the middle of something. Let me call you back. Okay. Half hour later, he calls me back. Al, do you have a passport? and I'm like, yes. You want to come to Australia? Yes. So what happened was they had this gig, they had this whole tour booked. And then Jeff quit. And they needed somebody to take Jeff's place on the tour. So basically I just got grabbed and I went with Mike. So at the time with Underground Resistance, everybody had a code name. So he was asking me what's going to be my code name. And this is back when Terminator 2 was out. And in the movie Terminator 2, you had the liquid metal shapeshifter cyborg, T-1000. So I'm like, okay, I can shapeshift to achieve my goals, like this guy. So that's why I took the name T-1000, because he was unstoppable. He could become anything and anyone in order to achieve his objective. So that's basically my self-motivating name.
The liquid metal monster.
Yeah.
You know, enough said.
And your middle name doesn't begin with the letter T, right? No,
it does not. So that's how I got the T-1000 name, and then that's when I got with Underground Resistance, and I was with Mike for 2 years. We went on tour a few times. It was Australia, Japan, Italy, and then after that, Mike decided he didn't want to play live anymore, and he started pushing me as a DJ. So people would actually call for Mike for gigs and be like, you know, do you want to play? We want UR. And he's like, no, man, you know, take my DJ T-1000, take him. And that's how my career started, because he would push me. So
what do you remember about that tour, playing with Mike and the other guys? Was, you know, obviously the UR fans can be quite fanatical. Did you experience that firsthand? And in which, you know, countries that you were in, was it the most? Yeah.
When we played in Adelaide, Australia, and that was a pretty wild gig. Kids were really super into it. And, that was back when Rob was with us. You know, Rob was the MC at that time, and I was the DJ. And Japan was really cool. We played Club Yellow. Yeah. Which I don't know if it's still there.
No.
Yeah, but yeah, we played there. That was pretty cool. Japan, that was one of the only 2 times that I've been to Japan, one of which was with Mike. So it was cool. And then I got off tour with Mike, and then I just started doing Generator, because Mike started Submerge, which was the distribution. So we started doing Generator when I got back. And then, but that's how I became DJ T1000. Oh, and by the way, when I was out on the road, that's when I lost my show, because I couldn't be back in Detroit to do my show on Friday night.
All right.
I had Dan Bell. Dan Bell did like 3. I had him fill in for me. He did 3 shows, because Dan Bell did a show in Canada at CJAM. He had done his own show. So I knew he could do radio, so I got him to do my show. But with me not being there, they basically fired me, which I don't really blame him, because I wasn't there to do it. But that's how I lost my show. But then in losing my show, I got on with UR, and then that's how my international career started.
And how many people were on that tour in that incarnation?
Well, how many people were with the band?
On that particular tour, how many of you guys were touring together? Australia,
it was 4. It was me, Rob Hood, Derwin Hall, and Mike.
And what was the approach in the sets or performances? Like, was it a hybrid of live and pre-recorded? I know yes. Mike really great at keys.
The way it was set up was Mike was the brain. Mm-hmm. He had kind of like a master mixing board with all of us going through it, so he could he could dub us out if he wanted to, just he can kill the vocals and bring up me or whatever. I was armed with these special acetates, and it was the old Ron Murphy lock grooves, and it was all various UR lock grooves. And then on the other side, it was a normal record with kind of basically remix parts. Wow. So I could just freestyle with remix parts over the main thing. Derwin was additional keyboards. He would play chords. That was his thing, chord man, like house. And then Rob was the MC. And then I was.
Do you still have the acetates?
I knew you'd ask that, and yes, I do. Next question.
I think I've seen on Discogs. I've seen some of these crazy never released 10-inch acetates. So this is what they were used for the tours, right?
Yeah, but we would use the full 12-inch acetate.
Okay.
Yeah, but I still got all those.
and Alan, were these? Did you guys rehearse? Was there a structure to them, or was it totally free form and improvised? What was
that was the weird thing about Australia, because I got scooped up into the band before we even got a chance to rehearse. And excuse me, the sound check was the rehearsal, basically. But Mike was the brain of it, and everything was going through him in terms of the tracks. So it really wasn't, everything else was kind of seasoning on top of what he was doing anyway. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a whole lot of room to mess up. Like if you heard like a break in the music where you could come in with some scratching or something like that, that's basically what I was doing, just scratching. And there was one bit in the show where he kills everything, and then I go in and I play like 3 tracks really, really fast, and then he comes back in with the live element. But it was very spontaneous, but he had everything under control in his station anyway. So that's how that worked.
And when were you anointed with the title Minister of Information?
I started going with see, now we have to go back. I worked for UR at the label for a year before I got into the actual band. And at that time, part of my degree program was learning how to do press releases and promo and all that stuff. So basically I knew how to do all that. And Jeff brought me in. And I was just doing press releases for the band. So I was the Minister of Information. And in those days, we would do these faxes and just send them out, because that was the way to do it back then, fax. And I would do all the press. And that's how I was dubbed Minister of Information. And then when people, since I had the radio background and the radio voice, Mike had me do kind of public statements whenever, he wanted. And he would just stand behind me like this, and he would let me talk or whatever. Yeah. I was communications guy, basically. Yeah. But then when Jeff left, I got into the band, and then Rob left with Jeff. They left together, basically. And Jeff went to start Axis, and then Rob went to start Implant. But I stayed with Mike for another year after that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Unbelievable.
So how did the stuff between you and Woody McBride get together on the Pure Sonic stuff?
So Wood, my buddy, I love that dude, man. Love him. Okay, anyway, so now we are in 94. And Generator had been going for a little while. Had like about 3 or 4 good releases out. And I started getting booked for Midwest raves. And this is the era of drop bass.
Yeah.
You gotta love those Midwest raves.
Yep. And this is the era of Kurt and drop bass. So he had a party, and I don't know how, I guess from the records, how they got a hold of me, because my phone number, back in the old days, you put your phone number on the record.
Yeah.
He would just call you up. And I got a call from Kurt Eckes, and he was giving a party, and he wanted T1000. So I went out and I played with him, and then that's when I met Wood. And then I hit it off with Wood, and then Woody was doing his Wall of Bass parties at the time. So based on me playing for Kurt, I started playing in Minneapolis for Wood. And one of those gigs, I went in a day early, and Woody used to have a studio in an old dentist office in downtown Minneapolis. And he called it the Scenic Overlook because it was actually up above. And I went in like a day before, and that's when we cut.
I heard drop bass.
12-inch. Drop bass. And yeah, that's when we cut the Generator thing. And what it was with Woody, he was going to pay me to come and DJ, and I told him, I says, give me an album. Don't give me money, give me an album. And then he gave me the album, and then that's the double pack that came out on the first double pack that came out on Generator, the Transporter EP. So yeah, I just give me tracks, don't pay me. So yeah.
Did you guys ever make it out to the West Coast and plan any raves?
I did. We didn't together though, but I did.
Okay.
I played Together as One in 2000. It was New Year's Eve 1999.
I remember that.
That was
I
Reza.
remember that. Yeah.
It was me and Sandra Collins and some other peeps. I don't know if the West Coast legends like Theo was playing there. I just remember me and Sandra. That was in 2000. Then these guys from New York were doing parties in LA.
That's funny you mentioned Theo. Theo actually works with my brother now. They work together.
Really?
At University of Santa Barbara. They share an office together.
Yeah, he's an awesome dude, man.
Yeah.
West Coast legend.
Yeah, man.
Theo and Huggy.
Yep.
Huggy. I forgot about that guy.
But no, I'm Reza brought me out like a couple of times back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Together as One, man. Yeah, it's just flashback when you said that. I totally forgot those parties existed.
Oh man.
Yeah, those are the big New Year's parties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the one in 99 going into 2000 was like at the Coliseum. No, was it the Coliseum? Damn.
I think it
can't
was
remember.
at the Coliseum.
Yeah. Damn, that's 20 years ago, man. Jesus.
Yep.
How does it feel to be in the scene so long and still, still doing it?
It's good.
Excluding this year.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's good. I mean,
You're still excited. You're still inspired and pumped.
Yeah, but it's just challenging. It's challenging to remain relevant.
Yeah.
You really have to be smart. I see a lot of cats that are not. They could be they could be bigger than older guys, right? They could be bigger than they are, but you know, you gotta play the game, you know. But I'm doing all right. Can't complain.
But I always think with DJs have a little bit of an advantage towards rock bands or something like that. I think as a DJ, if you play it smart, you actually can only get better the older you get.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't think
like
it's
fine wine?
Like fine wine. I mean, you gain experience, you gain knowledge, routine.
You don't think it's the same with rock bands?
No, rock bands, you know, I mean, first of all, it's bands, it's more difficult, obviously.
Right.
There's exceptions. Look at Depeche Mode and Nine Inch Nails.
Look at Radiohead.
Radiohead.
Don't you think
there's definitely points, but I think for DJs, since we're mostly solo artists, it is a little easier, and you're not solely working with your own music. You can always do other stuff. You're not limited to.
We know, Chris, a lot of DJs have become complacent due to the fact that they're touring so much. They're on the road. They're not checking records. They're not really in touch with what's going on as well. I mean, it's exactly the same as a band who's always touring and maybe not in a studio progressing. You know, I think there's definitely parallels in that regard. You know, I've seen so many people that I've really admired who they're just not interested in going record shopping or just because they have their thing, you know. So, but of course,
is it really that? Is it that they have their thing, or they're just kind of burned out?
Well, there's two ways. I mean, there's always the guys that have their career is driven upon their sound, so they don't actually have to buy into other people's sound. They can tour off the fact that people love what they do. And then there's the guys that become successful, but they become lazy. And I think that's the apathy, and the people do become lazy with success. You know,
it certainly does exist. But then, you know, you also can't forget people who just fall out of love with the way the music has progressed, or the scene has progressed, or even the ethics behind the scene as well, because that can play a big role in dampening your inspiration as an individual artist to continue to push forward into a community that you don't really feel like reflects you anymore.
Yeah. Well, no, I think all of us in this chat have seen how trends come up and down. I mean, there's certainly been moments in the last 10 years where I've been around music, but I don't like, you know. Yeah. But these are fads, you know. These are things that come and go, but hopefully, good music always sort of transgress. You know, it's always going to be, you know.
Sure,
I think we've all felt burnt out from time to time, but you know, you might not always follow all the trends, and sometimes maybe you feel like you don't understand what's happening in the musical landscape today. But I think for all of us, there's always something that, I mean, if you have your ear to the street, there's always something that gets you back in the game, so to speak. Like it keeps you inspired.
But then,
I think it's the artists that stop listening and kind of tune out and check out because they kind of throw in the towel. They're like, I don't understand what the kids are listening to today. I don't get why everyone likes this genre or that genre or this artist or that artist, and they stop, you know.
But then again, is that, as you know, kind of elders and leaders, you know, it's up to people like us to push. You know, people look to us for the sound.
Yeah.
And it's kind of up to you to push your sound, no matter what distractions or fads or, you know, whatever is going on out there. It's up to you to just continue with your sound, because basically, if you're in it for the right reasons and you push your sound and you're the true north, people will eventually fall in line to point true north. So somebody has to be the true north. You know, you got a guy like Jeff Mills who has his sound. He doesn't react to all these fads because he's his own genre.
Yeah.
You know, he's his own sound. Yeah. So he has no need to surf trends.
Yeah.
See, that's kind of the
good point.
A lot of kind of the older artists need to take. You know, it's like, you've got your sound, because eventually they'll come back to your sound.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take you out of context. That's a great quote. Be your own true north.
Yep.
Everyone watching.
I was talking to Daniel Wang about the DJs, disco DJs, and he was saying that actually for him, it's far more interesting to hear a young DJ play disco records rather than a DJ from that time who's still playing disco records.
Who lived through the records.
Because they're playing them in a different way, in a contemporary way.
Right.
And I guess we're seeing that maybe with the current trend of techno now, where there's a lot of young artists, DJs playing this very fast techno. I mean, that's maybe it's very retro in a way. So, I mean, but maybe none of the people who watch these live streams would want to hear one of the older DJs who's maybe still playing that sound.
Yeah.
That makes sense, you know.
And
I mean, I could be wrong about this, and this is just a personal reflection, and I'd love to hear you guys argue it, but I kind of feel like these days it just feels like the younger and younger generations tend to care less about the historical context of the music, if that makes any sense. It seems like they're paying a lot less attention to older DJs and just kind of flying off the foot of their seat, just listening to whatever's coming their way, and the new hot sound, the new hot face, and the new DJ around the block. And I don't know, it seems like in my era, we spent so much time digging into the history of the music. Who started this label? What were those people inspired by? Where did that label come from? What was that? And we were always kind of looking to the past to kind of learn about the historical roots of the music we loved. And I feel like these younger generations care a lot less about where it came from or who it came from.
I mean, I think you still have the geeks today. They're probably more than ever. But they're discovering it in just new ways. You know, they're still exploring and they're still discovering. And you obviously have the commercial end of the spectrum. But you have this whole other generation that
What's Alan
pushing the envelope.
With techno being over 30 years old, what's your views on where it's going?
I hate to try to make predictions, because we just don't know, especially now with COVID.
But you're into the new technology, right? With writing and producing, you're doing classes, you're teaching, right, at the moment. So you're very much up to speed with the technology. And do you see this enabling young people to create something that we haven't yet heard, or what's your view on this?
I really believe that.
Yeah.
You know, when I did a class last spring back in Detroit of high school students, and my job was to just basically show them the basics on Machine and Micro, and I just kind of sat back and just let them do their thing. And their thing is not techno or house music or anything 4/4. I mean, these kids want to make trap, you know, hip hop. And, you know, I respect that.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the reasons why I started kind of trying to do a little of this instruction and teaching now, is because, you know, I really kind of want to let a lot of Black kids know that, you know, this is our music, this 4/4 techno or house. But eventually someone will produce something that we have not heard before. I mean, if you look at trap, what's going on with trap, nobody had any idea what trap beats were.
Yeah.
But it was kids on SoundCloud, and they had GarageBand and you know, these, you know, Fruity Loops, and now all of a sudden it's like the biggest thing.
Yeah.
So, but my attitude is always to sit back and just let them do their thing, and don't try to. It's always best when they discover it on their own.
And were you friends with Dilla in Detroit?
I did not know him.
Okay, because I mean he completely threw the rule book out the window. When it came to hip hop, and like then the world, just everyone wanted him, right, because of what he did. I mean, it was like a breath of fresh air.
Well, he's from Detroit.
Yeah. I forgot that Jay Dilla's from Detroit. Wow.
Pretty much,
Yeah,
yeah.
Rest in peace.
Alan, I would love to go back a little bit into your career again, from the German perspective a little.
Okay.
What was it? What was it like? What was your relationship with Tresor, with Dimitri? How did it affect your career? And obviously you're living in Berlin now. How did that Berlin-Detroit connection how did it feel for you? How did it come about?
Going back to the very beginning, man, you guys are doing the deep dive. So I had these tracks and I had this album, and it turned out that Corolla and Max from Tresor were coming to Detroit. This is 1996. So I got a call from Corolla, and she had gotten my number from Mike Banks. Hey, we're putting together this book. We want to maybe come to your studio and talk to you and blah, blah, blah. And then I told her, I says, okay, you can come to my studio and interview me, but you have to listen to my demo while you're here. And she's like, okay, cool. So she came over, we did a little interview, and then she listened to my demo. And long story short, that demo became Jet Set Love Life EP on Tresor. That was my first record for Tresor. And then from that point on, as I said before, that's when I played Tresor the following summer or whatever, the following fall for the first time. And then after that, I did my album for them, Progress. And that really changed my direction. And it started me on a European path in terms of my career. Because before that, I was playing like the Midwest raves in America.
Were you aware of the Tresor label at all?
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, Mike and Jeff did X101 for Tresor.
Yeah.
So and then that Vision record came out on Interfish. So I knew of them, and you are actually played Tresor first, and then they came back from Tresor, and that's when they started making harder techno. Because before that, you remember before they were doing kind of deep house, and they did they did 2 techno EPs and a deep house EP, and then they did the Blake Baxter EP.
Yeah.
Then they went to go play Tresor live. They come back, and then they're making Punisher, Death Star, X101, like the hardest.
That would be one of my questions, like playing Tresor, and you guys coming over to Berlin where there's literally no curfew and there's no, like, it's super liberal, like there's no bouncer telling you have to stop now. Yeah. Did that affect your music? Did that affect like the thinking about producing and everything? Did that change stuff?
It totally did. It totally did. Because then this is when we all started making rave records, right? And then I made the X313 record back in that same time frame, and we started making these like buzzsaw leads, and So
did you feel like Europe maybe like felt it more than like the Midwest? Like, did it feel more of a serious thing? Like they really looked to you guys as these revered artists from the birthplace of techno, and it was serious business. And did it feel like that? Was there a lot of gravitas to the way the Europeans?
You were correct. Yeah. What it ended up happening was that we were the new wave of jazz guys from America.
Yeah. I like the way you put that.
Right. Yeah. We were just the latest iteration of Dexter Gordon. Dexter Gordon moved to Paris and never came back. We were that guy.
Yeah.
In the States, it was Candy Rave. It was nice. The money was good, but it came and went. Because it wasn't any real. It turned out not to be any real substance behind it. Because once the kids aged out or they lost interest, that was the end of it. And then, of course, in America, the drugs came into it, and then you had you know, our new president-elect with the Rave Act,
Yeah.
you know, trying to shut down venues and that sort of thing. So that's what killed it in America.
Yeah.
I mean, just from the sidelines, it seemed like the Europeans just gave you guys so much more respect.
Oh, absolutely. Because here in Europe, it's cultural.
Yeah.
It's not this hedonistic drug music and lots of only druggies do this stuff, and you know, orgies in the middle of the dance floor and all this. You know, that was kind of the puritanical America, and they were trying to make this whole panic at the time, like you know 2020 on ABC. Oh my God, raves! Is your daughter there? You know, that sort of thing.
Fox Undercover.
Exactly. You guys know.
Yeah.
So,
We saw that whole shit go down, man.
fuck yeah, right?
My parents were yelling at me as soon as that shit came on TV. Is this what you fucking do?
You know. But here it's cultural. It's jazz. It's blues. It's, you know, and you're a cultural figure. You're not just a DJ playing this music for these druggies. You're like an actual cultural figure. You know, so much so, you know, I did a show in LA in 2018 that was sponsored by the Goethe Institute here, you know, which the German government. So, you know, it's more legitimate here for sure.
Why do you think that is?
You know, it's conservative America. Yeah. And if it's not corporate backed, they don't want it. I mean, it's just, you know, that's really all it is.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And you know, we got to say it. Black artists who are not making stereotypical rap music or whatever. I mean, you are ignored.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, if you know, see, I don't want to get into that, man.
I'll get into it.
I remember disappointing.
I remember Alan being at the Dance Star Awards in Miami in 2002 and speaking, I think, to Ben Turner. I said, why isn't like Larry Heard getting the Lifetime Achievement Award at a ceremony like this? And he said, well, because no one knows who he is. You know, and that's how you have to think about it. I mean, Scooter was doing a live performance. I mean, I saw it, maybe even Ali. I mean, you might have been there, Ali, but this was when Dance Star Awards was on the beach in Miami. It was a big do, but you know, for all of the music industry in the States. But of course, guys like Larry Heard, they're not recognized as being, you know, the historic figure or legend figure that they are. You know, so. And that's what you're fighting against, you know, in this huge country, right?
I mean, Alan, being, you know, that you've been living in Berlin all these years, and in light of what's transpired, you know, over the past few years in America, and especially this year, whatever, what's your point of view on America, on your, you know, where T1000 was formed and all this great stuff happened in that first part of your career. You know, has your outlook on America and the music scene, has it changed? Has it gotten worse? Or you don't have to answer that question.
No. I don't have a problem with that part.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, when I came here full time, you know, I mean, who knew that in 5 years America would like totally collapse? Because when I left, it was for the work. It wasn't for politics. It was just for work. It was like, okay, there was no gigs in America. This is where the gigs were. And I had a series of circumstances back in the States where it's like, okay, let's just go here full time. And then, of course, you know, Trump gets in and then everything kind of goes to shit. My thought on America is that it's just a certain underlying thing about America that prevents this stuff from really happening. You know, in my opinion, you know, it's puritanical. Yeah. You know, nothing good happens after midnight. Why should we use public funds for like these clubs, right? You've even got the bartenders who don't want to work past 2 a.m. They're like, okay, 2 a.m. That's it, man. I'm through. I'm out. Mm. There's a big thing in Detroit. Angie Linder and Detroit Techno Militia and those guys. They were trying to work with the city to kind of abolish the 2 a.m. curfew. They want to do like a nighttime economy, like here in Berlin, where the clubs stay open 24 hours. But you're fighting against it's women, it's old women in church hats, and they're who run Detroit. Church people, you know.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, good luck to them, right? And you know, and I remember I was watching about a year ago. Mike Banks did a Red Bull thing, and they interviewed him. And Mike was like, you know, don't come to Berlin. Make it happen where you are. We need places to play. So make it happen where you are so we can come play. And that it's good logic and it's good to say. And Berlin is basically, it's at the saturation point. But a lot of people came here because they tried to make it work in the States and it didn't make it. You know, you lose money doing gigs, you're pushing this music. Nobody really cares about it. There's no lyrics in it. You know, so it's really hard for a lot of people, you know. And then you come here and it's accepted and it's like a way of life. And, you know, so once you get past a certain point in terms of your age or your development, it's like, okay, you start thinking about the path of least resistance as opposed to banging your head against the wall over and over and over. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting
different results.
You know what I mean? And so many people like try to kickstart this thing, to try to make it happen. And one of the things like in the States in terms of like rave or like independent promoters and stuff like that is how they try to cut each other's balls off. You know, like they would, like two people do shows same night, you know, just to fuck with you. You know what I mean? I mean, here, all these people work together. You know, like Berghain, Trezor, Watergate, Suicide, you know, they all work together.
To a certain extent.
Well, I mean, you know, Berghain's got that thing where if you play there, you can't play anywhere else for like, 6 weeks, 2 months, whatever.
Yeah.
But my German is awful. So it could be a layer to this that I'm not privy to. But what I see, they don't really hate on each other like that.
Yeah.
You know, but promoters in the States, you're doing a gig, you're bringing in these people and these other people that just want to step right on your date. Just, you know.
Right. But I think you got a big point with like the conservatism in the States too. And, you know, if you are limited to only open till 2 a.m., there's obviously more competition going on between promoters because no one is like, you know, in Berlin, 24 hours. So people are like, oh, between that time I go there, between that time I go there. There is easier to work together in America. Right. I always felt like, you know, I was an exchange student in the States when I was 17. And I was like in the first week I was there, I wanted to go buy a beer. And everybody looked at me as like if I was going to buy heroin. And I was like, what's going on with you people? It's like, that's normal for us in German. That's like, we're Germans. That's relatively normal. And I always felt the drinking age, that 21-year drinking age was separating the younger crowd from the older crowd. And that's why there was never really a possibility to create or to have a club culture in that sense. Because we were going out with 16 to a club where I could be standing in the corner with my 16 years old and have a beer in my hand. And there were like 25, 6-year-old dancing on the dance floor and everybody's growing up in it together. And that's what I kind of like, I felt like, and I think you just pointed it out, and that is conservatism, I think. And the 21-year-old drinking age it really killed club culture in the past 30, 40, 50 years in the States.
Right.
Well,
I think the analogy that brings up is like, you know, you could give an 18-year-old a gun and, you know,
send them off to war.
Yeah, serve in a war, but like they can't drink. It's like
for a country who promotes a separation between you know, religion and state, it's really non-existent because religion has such a huge, massive influence on all these conservative things that are implemented on us in the first place. But I agree with you, Alan, about the scene in the U.S. and how competition tends to beat itself up. But I'll say this much, like, because when we started doing parties in LA, these are all things that I kind of kept in consideration when we started doing stuff. And we started doing techno shows in LA because nobody else was. And I think that also had a big portion of why I never moved to Berlin, because I always felt like I had a responsibility here to keep things going on in this city, to, help keep it alive on some level. And that competition thing definitely reared its ugly face more than once. But I've always combated it with kindness in the best way I could. If another promoter started throwing nights, I would just reach out to them and be like, well, send me all the info for your party and we're going to do everything we can to help you promote your show.
Right. But Mo, the best parties in LA are all illegal, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely. That's true.
That's the only way you can throw a proper party. Like,
Well, that's true, because I mean, we have a massive amount of legal clubs in this city, but no one's gonna take a chance on this music that doesn't like kind of waver on the tip of pop culture a little bit.
Because I always
it's
thought
Hollywood at the end of the day.
this is the thing. I always thought like it's actually it's a very disappointing place for Europeans or anyone who's traveling to America to go to, like Hollywood, the entertainment capital of the world, when you have these antiquarian sort of laws that it's ridiculous. You can't enjoy yourself, and it's supposed to be about it's enjoyment, right? You're in Hollywood, and
yeah, but for the most part, this is
dullest places on earth.
It's also rather. I mean, it wasn't like that in the 90s.
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
When I first started going to raves, I mean, we didn't have time limits. Clubs didn't close at 2 a.m.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I mean,
there was all ages, and there was all ages parties,
and there was all age parties.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, everybody went. This is how it was where we grew up.
In the early 2000s is when it kicked in.
In the 90s, when I was going to raves, I don't really see it that much different than my experience being in Berlin. I mean, we would party on Friday night all the way through Saturday. We would Sunday morning when the warehouse would shut down at noon, everybody would drive to Venice Beach, and we would like sober up at Venice Beach until sunset.
So the bars and everything, they were open all hours, or how did it work?
I mean, not everywhere was 24 hours, but a large majority of it was. People served.
No, but there was it wasn't that there were 24 hours, but there was the 2 a.m. shutdown, and then the bars are legally to open at 6 in the morning. So people would just hang around at the parties, and do drugs, and then 6 a.m. you can buy booze again.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I remember going to raves, like big raves in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and there was it was an all ages rave, and they would go to like 10 in the morning.
Yeah, there was no limit of when it ended. I mean, certainly like what Alan brought up, it was this kind of with Biden's anti-rave law that had came up when everything started kind of cracking down, and everything had changed.
Yeah. And now I think raves are all 21 and over. And it's like, damn, I was going to raves all night at like 15 years old, and coming home on Sunday morning is like,
you had a good fake ID.
No, you didn't. No, back then you didn't. There were all ages raves. You didn't need it. You didn't need any ID.
They had to put a stop to that, man, because the congressman's daughter would end up at these raves half naked somewhere.
Yeah.
The mayor's son is getting high some fucking where.
Yeah.
And the cops would roll in, and they'd see the kid of the police chief or some shit. So they had to really crack down. I think that is really what had like nationwide had them crack down on this rave thing.
And the amount of deaths too.
The children of these politicians are turning up at these parties with these drugs and whatnot, and they couldn't have that. So I think that's at least part of the whole push to stop them back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, there would be like these desert parties where somebody would walk out, into the desert in the middle of the night and fall off the end of the cliff, and they wouldn't find his body until weeks later, or tons of kids who would pass away, unfortunately, at events that led to these regulations as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the drugs were out of control, and that was a big problem.
So Alan, where's the last venue? Where's the last gig you did in the States when you went back? Where have you played?
Last place I played in the States was Marble Bar in Detroit.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Marble Bar. That was the
When
last.
was
thing.
that?
Marble Bar in the States in
Yeah.
Detroit.
When was that?
Last January.
Oh wow.
I played in Grand Rapids and then I played Detroit.
And what was your last gig before the shutdown?
Romania. Yeah, I played in Cluj.
Ooh.
And that was also in January. That was the end of January. No. Yeah, it was the end of January going into February.
And have you played anywhere since then?
There was one
Berlin,
semi-underground party here in Berlin that I played, and this was back in the summer. I think it was in August. I played with Adam X. And it was it wasn't a super spreader. It was like limited to like 150 people. We had distancing. During the day, it was two parts. During the day, it was a daytime party out in the open. At night,
it's the generator party.
That's right, Generator Hostel. You know it.
Yeah, I played there.
Yeah, did you? Yeah. So no, before anybody accuses me of being a super spreader, everything
Shame
was
on you guys. Shame.
No.
But have you guys
and then I got a COVID test. Me and Adam went together to get a COVID test like that Tuesday. So yeah. So we're in the clear. Everything's all good.
It seems like no one's calling each other out anymore. I don't know. Is that just me that I've noticed that, like for playing so-called super spreader parties or any party during this pandemic?
Muted all the accounts. You're just not seeing it.
Huh?
People are getting called out. You're just not seeing it.
I haven't seen it. Yeah.
But there haven't been that much events lately though, because everything is shut down again.
Dude.
Or are there?
There were gigs all summer.
Yeah.
But I mean recently.
Well, no.
Or are there tons of shit going on?
There is apparently a gig in a party in Orlando, Florida tomorrow where a DJ plays.
Florida is like off the charts right now with the parties.
There's no lockdown in Florida.
Yeah, there's no mask wear. There's nothing. It's like
and the parties still getting this in like Dallas as well. I saw there's parties there, but I mean, the Florida is completely open.
Pretty good at like monitoring Twitter for who's calling out who, right? So has anyone called anybody out like over the last few months for playing anywhere? It seems like a lot of DJs I know are playing a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
But there's one particular.
And there's a huge. There's a lot of them that are now headed to, or in a few weeks they're going to be headed to South America, Ecuador and Colombia.
Can you name some, Ali, so we can follow them online?
You know what, man? I've deleted Facebook and Twitter from my phone.
We'll talk. Yo, Matt, we'll talk off camera.
Everyone's on a need
off camera
basis. So if they want everyone to know where they're playing, they'll let everyone know.
Yeah,
it's like I think DJs are moving to where things are kind of slowly opening back up again.
Yeah,
they're just going around, like Europe's closed, so they're going to South America where they're slowly getting back to not normal, but they're opening up, which eventually will come back to a shutdown. US again we're basically shut down again here in LA County anyway. They just
you guys you can still travel to Mexico, right? And that's all completely.
Yeah, Mexico's wide open. Tulum's
anyone can go to Mexico.
They're just like, bring us your money. We'll take your money. Come eat some tacos. Chill.
That's why we call Mexico God's blind spot, because the one place
we should do a DJs and Beers.
Happening.
We should do a DJs and Beers back-to-back set in Tulum in January. How about that?
I'm down. I want to go to Tulum.
Let's go to Tulum in January.
I want to eat some shrimp tacos on the beach.
I'm booked to play in Tulum in January. January 14. I can say because it's being advertised.
Okay.
Is it happening?
Which party, Ali?
It's a Renaissance party, and I'm playing with Ben Clock, Ellen, Alien, and Sven Vaith.
Wow.
Crazy. Oh man, super spreader event.
Yeah, totally.
Dude, I'm
I don't
jealous.
know, man. I'm good right here in my
Jealous.
room. I'm
I just
totally
wanted.
good,
I would
man.
just like to go just to be there. I don't even care about playing.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, I'll just go for the tacos.
Ali, what's your social media after that show now?
Yeah.
Wow.
David.
Yes, sir.
I saw a tweet from you that basically said that you didn't care if DJing for you came back or something like that.
Yeah, I think I've reached that point where
If what didn't
get me
come
wrong.
back?
Don't get me wrong. What's that?
If what didn't come back?
Gigs.
DJing didn't come back for me.
Oh, for you. You would do what if DJ didn't come back?
I wouldn't care.
Oh, what?
I don't know
I
if
think
you
I just-
wouldn't
How
care.
dare you?
No. Don't take this the wrong way. I would love to go back, but if it never came back, I think I've reached to the point where I'd be comfortable with it.
And
I don't know. I just I like making music. Maybe I'll just get a job.
You've been
And-
making you've been so prolific this year, David. I mean, the music's
No, I know. Unfortunately, being prolific doesn't pay the bills all the time. The music doesn't pay the bills.
Right.
But yeah,
Really?
I still don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean I want to stop making music or anything. It's just saying if the gigs don't come back, then it is what it is, man.
I see the
David, what
headlines.
about being your own North Star? What happened to that?
I am my own North Star.
Huh?
It's a very
He's being-
zen thing.
he's
It's a
true to
very
himself.
zen thing. It's a very zen thing David's saying there.
That's what I mean.
you know,
That's
he's
what I'm
content
feeling.
with it. It reminds me of the first time I met David and he was making tracks and I was like, dude, this shit's really good, man. You should put this stuff. And he was like, I guess. It's like just doing it purely because you love it, not because there's gigs or there's anything in it. You just making music because you like it.
You guys should be on. You should be on tour in Florida right now, right?
No, man.
Should be driving across the country.
Dude, honestly, I got offered a gig in Florida and Colombia, but I'm still too. I don't know. I'm still too scared to fly. I don't think I could do it.
But Ali,
already
didn't
turned
you
it
come
down.
over to Europe in order to play more gigs, and now all the gigs are in Florida?
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly what happened.
Oh shit!
But actually,
trying to get back-
I wanted to jump back to something about Detroit. Whatever happened to Trezor opening a place in Detroit? Because that was like years ago already now, right?
Dimitri has been wanting to do a Trezor Detroit for the past 20 years, since the 90s. And they were really close with this spot. And I don't know what happened with it, to be perfectly honest.
Fell through, huh?
Fell through. Have no idea.
Yeah, because I was curious of I wonder what the idea was going to be. Like, was it to open a club, Trezor, and have it be like this all night thing, or is it going to follow the rules of Detroit at 2 a.m.? Like, it seemed like that wouldn't work. You know what I mean?
That was part of the reason why they were really petitioning the mayor's office and the city council to do the 24-hour license. Kind of as a prelude to the a possible Trezor opening in Detroit. But I don't know what happened with that. They opened a second Trezor in Dortmund here in Germany, and they had just started it, and then COVID happened. And I was lucky enough to play there. I was like in the first weekend, but COVID was soon after. So,
I mean, Alan, do you not think, looking at America and growing up in Detroit, I mean, do you think that it'll ever change with the laws there on an economic side, where they'll need this nighttime economics to I mean, especially with a city like Detroit, which is, I mean, there's a lot of young people. Are people moving there? I mean, or are people still moving out?
no, people are moving there.
Yeah,
Detroit,
I've heard
Detroit
about
is the new hot city.
Mm-hmm.
All these Brooklynites are moving there now. Gentrification through the roof,
Yeah.
But to be honest, I don't know if it'll. Whenever you try to introduce something European to America, they fight it.
Yeah.
You know,
Because in the late 90s in like Barcelona, they tried to stop all the nightlife. They tried to close a lot of the parties on the beach, and then I think they realised that they need this economy. They need, and now it's like it's the number one tourist destination in Europe.
But you know what? See, they're Europeans at the end of the day. They're not puritanical Americans.
Right.
I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, it's a common sense thing,
Yeah.
But I mean, as we know, I mean, it's about interests and not common sense in America.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would ever get so bad in America that they would say, hey, you know what? Let's have clubs open 24 hours, whenever, close whenever they close. I don't think it'll ever get that economically bad in America where they'll say that.
But you have in Detroit, you have like a casino that's 24 hours, right?
Casinos make money. That's something they understand. I mean, they get that. They're like, okay, that's tax dollars, sure. We'll, I mean, but
don't casinos have their own laws because it's being like in Native American land or something?
No, there are non-native casinos though, like the Windsor Casino and the ones in Detroit. Okay. These are non-native, although natives do own interests in non-native casinos. That's something I know nothing about.
But I thought like different laws apply to those types of businesses.
To tribal casinos, yes.
Yeah.
But there are casinos right in Detroit now.
Is it the Motor City casino?
Yes.
Yeah.
And those guys obviously are open 24 hours. But see, that's something that they understand. They get it. It's like, oh, it's a casino. It makes money. Okay. But, now you start talking about
crazy
this club thing. And it's this abstract thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of the DJs, why do you have to fly in these DJs? Aren't there DJs here?
There's something to be said about
they don't, so
when there is economic crisis and poverty that rises with it, there is a counterculture that grows with it as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, I can see when things start coming back after COVID, especially if this goes another year and we're talking about like things not returning semi-normal until 2022 or something like that. Mm-hmm. The amount of people who have lost their jobs, the amount of unemployment, the amount of people who've been evicted from their homes, there's got to be a new counterculture that rises from this, a new kind of era of whether it's legal or not.
If something emerges, it's going to be something like you didn't even imagine.
Yeah.
If something comes along, it's going to be something that you did not predict. And it's going to take on a direction that you did not see coming.
Yeah.
Well, whatever it is, I hope it's inspiring.
Is that how unpredictable America is right now?
I think in general. I mean,
I think in the world.
This stuff changes from week to week.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even remember what happened in August. Can you?
No.
See, I mean, so you really cannot. If there is a new counterculture that emerges post COVID, it'll take a form that we do not know. I mean, my cynicism tells me that it'll basically go back roughly to where it was, just like 9/11. Like 9/11. Oh my God! The world has changed. Everything's changed. Business as usual. I mean, there's not even a 9/11 day that's a holiday. With people just have gone on with it.
Yeah.
So I feel the same with COVID. It'll be a semblance of what was before, but I think it'll either be A, no real big changes, or B, it'll take a form that we don't know, because these young kids have their own ideas and they're going to do their own thing. So.
Alan, do you feel compelled to represent some of your perspectives on the future of our scene and our country through your work in comics or through the artwork, that you like? Do you feel like you can communicate these thoughts on the future, on your vision of the future through your work as a cartoonist.
Well, I mean,
and maybe also in your work as a musician, you know.
Well, I'm thinking of doing after I finish this thing. There's a new idea that I had that's going to incorporate all this stuff. But in general, I just, I just remain kind of doing stuff out of my own head. I'm not like, I'm not really like kind of a social artist. There are a lot of guys that are kind of radical artists and stuff. I'm not like that. I just do my little comics and my little paintings and stuff like that. But I'm being commissioned to do a new comic, and it'll address all this stuff, I think.
I like to hear that.
Have you ever thought about doing any kind of animated stuff?
I mean, too much money. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it myself.
I think it'd look amazing.
I mean, it would be great, but I mean.
Yeah.
And you can soundtrack.
You would have to hook up with somebody who does animation the way that we do music, and that's all they do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that costs. I don't have budget for that.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a full-blown graphic novel from you with an album to accompany it as a soundtrack.
Exactly.
Someday.
Yeah.
That's what I love to hear, man.
We all want to see that.
Yeah.
Sorry to put the pressure on you, but if there's somebody who could bring those worlds together in any way, I think it's you, man.
I'm working on something like that. So it's funny you should mention it.
Good.
But I'm at the beginning stages of it. I'm like 3 tracks in on the tracks, but yeah.
Alan, I was going to say in closing, it's been incredible talking to you. Is there anything that you have coming up that you're working on that you want everyone, including us, to look out for?
Well, on my Bandcamp, I'm re-releasing one of the old Generator 12 inches, Hard Signal Aeolus 14 Umbra, just newly digitized. It came out originally in '93. It was played by Sven Väth and the late, great Colin Favor in London, Kiss FM. So we're doing that. I have just various stuff that's in production, nothing really ready yet to really promote. On my social media, you guys will be the first to know. Other than that, just trying to crack down and use this downtime to really, really produce music and art, and trying to stay positive also. Yeah, but nothing really new to super push other than my Hard Signal re-release on my Bandcamp.
What about the schooling and the classes and stuff like that?
Oh, okay. I forgot about that. I am right now doing a class for Ramp Academy of Music Production here in Berlin. Next week is the last class, but the class is called 360 Degrees of Underground. What it entails, the first 2 weeks was production, basic track making and arrangement, and basically I'm just how I do it. The second 2 weeks is promotion, distribution, how to make contact with labels, that sort of thing. And the premise being you're doing it with zero money, DIY. So I'm almost done with that course. I was asked about another one next year, but this is a kind of a new direction for me with the classes and teaching, and it's really nice. And the students are really cool, and I really like sharing the knowledge. So it's
awesome.
Cool. Sounds amazing. Well, continue to be your own North Star.
I think I made a new catchphrase, Ali.
I think you did.
Good one. It's a good one.
I think you did. Well, keep doing your thing, man.
North Star.
Very inspiring chat, and
Alan, so amazing to see you here. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Guys, I'm honored to be among this crew.
Yeah, man.
Our pleasure, man.
I worked a long
to have
time to
you.
get to this level.
All right,
Hey, I wanted
everyone,
to mention something before we end the show. Sorry, just quickly. Tomorrow's Bandcamp Day, and I know a lot of us in the whole world, music industry or not, are hurting financially. But if you are in a position of privilege to help support any musicians or artists, I urge you to go to Bandcamp and buy music from people directly, because that music goes directly to their pocket. So show some love to the people that inspire you with their music, man.
Here, here.
Yeah, support. And
Cheers.
thanks to everyone who's been supporting, because definitely seen that a lot. So cheers, everyone.
Alan, once again, thanks again, man.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Mo.
Much
Very cool.
respect.
Thanks,
Guys.
guys.
Thank you,
Take care,
guys.
everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks
Have a
everyone
good
for
week.
watching. See you next week.
Peace.
Next week.